This is day 1 of the July 97 7-day retreat in Springwater. As we usually do on the first day, let us talk about a new kind of listening, and not just talk about it. Can we begin to listen together in a new way? What is listening? And how do we listen normally? Through a build-up of habits, ideas, stories, expectations, and fears. Mostly fear for ourselves. In sitting here this moment, quietly, even though one person is talking, is there simple listening of what is happening? The rattling motor, birds twittering, caw caw, breathing. Can there be simple listening in breathing? Breathing in, breathing out. Listening to the words that are spoken and to the words, thoughts that arise within the mind. Without trying to meddle with it, with any of it. Usually our listening is not pure. And I don't mean pure in an ethical or moral sense, but pure meaning free from the story of ourselves, the story about our world, you and me, which has built up over a whole lifetime, including the lifetime of all who preceded us. And it's an enormous question to ask: is it possible to listen without that story interfering and coloring, filtering what is heard and perceived? And there's no yes or no to this question, but a wondering what goes on in listening, as one may find one hasn't heard the last sentence or two. The mind drifts off, does it? Into thoughts about the past, the future, or, as many people tell me, just garbage thoughts, randomly milling around. Well, whether it's garbage or not, it remains to be seen. So in listening to a talk, the first talk in a retreat? Are there expectations in the mind? Expectations one has brought of what one wants the retreat to do for one, what one wants to get out of the talks, and in this woven into the expectation are ideas about oneself and the person who is giving the talk. What I am and what she is, what role she is playing, liking her or not. Ideas about reputation. I don't have to list it all. Is it there, or is there a free being here, freely listening to what is coming up, without the weight of imagery? Or can that weight of imagery reveal itself, maybe in bits and pieces at a time? It's very, very difficult. It's simple, but very, very difficult to become aware of this whole built-in belief system in which we operate, habitually, unconsciously, invested in it, attached to it, identified with it. This is me, and it's true. This is the underlying assumption. The beliefs in which we're woven are true. They have validity. So, becoming aware, that's possible, to become aware. Here's a belief, a storyline from way back, constantly fed, constantly added to, something taken away from it too, here and there. Becoming aware of it and then wondering, is it true? It's an enormous step to wonder, is this true? And if the impulse is right there to say, yes, of course it is, then to ask, how do I know that? Can we ask that? Are we free? Free floating, free wheeling, like a ball bearing? Our ball bearing still has something to bear on. This freedom to ask has nothing to bear on except this energy of wondering and the freedom to question everything about what I know and think about myself and the other. Right now, for instance, the person who's sitting here with a cup and a microphone. To allow this imagery and story and belief system to emerge into view. It's not a visual or auditory view, I don't know what it is. It's an internal display. What's very close, very much taken for granted, very much adhered to, attached to. How strong the attachment is evidenced when somebody else questions the belief system, the defensiveness, the hurt, the withdrawal, the justification, anything but questioning it freely and finding out the truth about ourselves, which does not lie in our belief system, in our stories, no matter how veritable they are. So, when we listen or try to listen to each other, here or in a meeting, single or group, how are we right now? Full of ourselves? Which is not said In a blaming way, it sounds like that, doesn't it? It's not meant this way. But if we look inwardly, wonderingly, we may find that we are full of ourselves. What we want, what we expect, what we know. And we know that we know. We insist on that. Or is there some space which is not occupied by myself? What I think and know and want and fear for and about myself and others. Is there some space that is vacant? Gentle breeze, the gentle rustling of leaves, not the words. All the words are there too. But the immediacy of perception, which is only possible if there's some vacancy, some vacation. This moment of listening to the words spoken to ourselves and to everything that's going on, which may turn out not to be a divided, separating affair at all. So, not to get fixated on a new idea. I must become empty in order to be able to listen. But what's there filling up the space? I'm interested. I want to find out. I want to listen inwardly as the words are spoken. Not just listen to the words, but open up in inward listening to try to find out about what's that stuff that's so filling, so compelling, so frightening, or desiring, expecting, resisting. What is that stuff? Can I be attuning into it as we're talking? As the listening turns inward, even though not blocking the sounds that abound around us, not blocking that so-called outward listening, it is actually the same listening, inward and outward, because there is no division. So as the listening turns inward and we're wondering about ourselves, what is all this stuff, this tightness, this tension and stress or anxiety, at times shaking with fear? Maybe not shaking with fear, but the organs and plexuses, tight, discomforting. What do we find beside the physical tensions and discomforts, diseases? As we look inward, because I'm not saying everybody now is in this state. We can look at it very generally, because we're all familiar with it. And memory of something that happened maybe a while ago or yesterday or a year ago can lend itself to being viewed freshly. It can be an accessory. It's only a problem when it rides in the saddle as the main mode. But as an accessory, we can look helped by memory of of what we have experienced or what others have experienced if it is not here right now. So what do we find beside all the physical discomforts or tensions or bliss? Maybe blissful feelings, pleasurable sensations. What else do we find inside as we look and explore and wonder? What makes us up and mixes us up? Thoughts, beliefs, fantasies, remembrances, ideas, concepts, the whole story of our lives. Believed to be telling us the truth about ourselves and those around us. Can we see that it is a story? See that it is a belief? That I'm separate from you? Maybe we can't. Maybe it's still a very solid fact. But we can still wonder about it. And wonder where we know this fact from. Who told us? Who made us believe it? No, we may not even ask that, because it is so. I am separate. I'm sitting here and everybody else is sitting on a different mat. It's not being negated or doubted. What we are concerned with is the mind fabrication about me and you, fed by all the memories, all the past remembered experiences and wishes and desires and ambitions of what we want to be or don't want to be. Oh, we're starting in full force on the first day. It's stuff for the whole week, and it will keep coming up. But we were asking, what prevents a pure, simple, open listening in which there's no feeling of loneliness or separation, and in which what is being said can be freely looked at inwardly, not accepting it. None of what is said here is said to be accepted. I may sound dogmatic at times. There's a lot of intensity in the voice and body movements. But not to mistake the intensity for an intention to indoctrinate people, make them believe something. What this is all about is to expose belief and question it. How do I know this is true? This is so. This is what we're in this work for, alone and together. If we're interested, it's up to each one. One may come here for a different reason and not want to question things. Every once in a while someone will tell me, this is not what I came here for. I'm seeking peace and quiet. Your questions are disturbing. And there may be a point of readiness for being disturbed, or a point of not readiness, then it's all right. Nothing is demanded or required except work in the kitchen or in the bathrooms or in this hall here. How beautiful it shines. See, our whole training in listening has been so different from what we're talking about here. Listen to me, says the mother, the father, the teacher. You're not listening to me. Which implies not just listening, but following, obeying. And that's wired into our whole system. And that's why a talk like this can easily be heard like that. This is what I should be doing. Sometimes people say, you say we should have no thought, or we should be empty. One has heard it this way, and it is quite understandable, because the hearing mechanism has been trained over many years with a lot of reward and punishment, starting at a time of total dependency, total vulnerability, needing parental love and approval. So no wonder it's so strong that we listen in order to remember and follow and obey. And someone says, question it all. And without rebellion, although rebellion may be the first reaction to the freedom from not needing to obey, is to rebel, protest. Everything is all right. Can it be seen? Come on display on this internal screen. Be seen and questioned. At first the following, now the protesting. Because there's no need to protest anything or to follow anything. All that we're asking is, what's going on? Can we see it? And words are spoken to maybe facilitate that looking. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. Sometimes it does, often it doesn't. But there's no force behind it to want to convince. Even though it may sound that way, it's not there. So we've been trained to follow, we've also been trained to remember, in order to be able to regurgitate, to give back. There's a woman in the last retreat, she has I don't know how many parrots in her house, in addition to some other 20 animals. And she was just giving a show of what all the voices are in that house coming from the parrots. She didn't buy them all fresh there. She takes animals from other people, or neglected animals, abandoned animals. She can hear the whole history of a parrot by what he says. So, it's not the aim, although one cannot help but pick up vocabulary if we are here together over extended periods of time or continuously. Over many years, one picks up certain words because we understand these words and definitions. And that's easier to communicate when we all agree tacitly or openly on what we mean by a word. And please, this is for meetings. If somebody says something and one doesn't understand what the person is saying, please let us feel free to say, what do you mean by that? That's not a criticism. It means, say some more, I want to understand you. Maybe you come from a different tradition, you use the same word in a different way. And we may argue at length over the word. But if we understand what you mean by it, then the word does not get into the way. So, even though a vocabulary is growing up and being used, and often here and there there's criticism of this, saying everybody in Springwater speaks the party line, to not be defensive about this. It's inevitable. But it's also very welcome to have some fresh expressions. Relish that, cherish it when people use fresh words, helpful for all of us, like opening the windows. And yet, what the words refer to is maybe the same thing as what the old words refer to. And if we're not locked into words, it doesn't matter what the words are. I started this part by saying this isn't necessarily to remember and repeat. Listening to a talk is not necessarily to remember and be able to repeat what is being said. And yet one may wish to remember, to bring it up in a group meeting, what was said. Sort of committed to memory, sometimes very difficult. Because when one is present from moment to moment, not all the time, but a good part of the time, then things are not adhered to and they don't form a very solid repository in the brain. So it may be hard to remember, and yet, if the right situation comes up of wondering about something, questioning, all of a sudden, there it is back. What one has wanted to refer to or say. So not to worry too much if one has forgotten. If it's important, it'll come back in a new way. Also, our listening, learning of the past has been associated with getting better, being good, excelling, surpassing others. This is our whole school education in this Western Hemisphere. Probably a lot of places in the East too now. To get the best marks. And one develops a certain skill in listening, what one knows will get one the best marks. It's not a wholesome, complete, open listening without a vantage or advantage point. And that may cause some anxiety, some insecurity because of the other habit. I need to hear, remember, to get better, to excel over others. You may say, well, wait a minute, this is ridiculous. I don't feel this way. But that's the trickiness of patterns. They may not be there in consciousness, but they operate nonetheless. Unconsciously, subliminally, which does not mean they cannot come onto the display when there is a new energy of awareness listening, which has no tie-up in a vantage point. And this energy of filling ourselves up with our story is freed to be here with what's there. And it operates in an illuminating way, illuminating patterns. I usually have touched in the first talk on the topic of authority. I think I've already dealt with it in a way, that what is said is not to establish my authority. Someone talked with me once and said, when I come here, I want somebody to speak authoritatively. This is what I come here for, not to follow, not to obey, but to listen to someone who's clear, and sure what they're saying or whatever. It was all that this person said. So the word, I realized, also has its shades of meanings. One can be an authority, maybe, in that sense of talking from what is seen to be so, albeit open to look again. Maybe I was wrong, maybe I didn't see it completely. Speaking with a certain strength that was meant by this authority. Knowing what one is talking about, seeing what one is talking about, and being authoritarian, expecting things from people. So, the latter is not in play. I'm not expecting anything from people. And I do not expect anything for myself of this function of talking. I'm saying it again because recently it has all come back. It was sort of dormant for a while. For years. In the beginning, very active, this whole thing of authority and no authority. Teacher, student, no teacher, no student. And then it sort of abated. Now it has come to the fore again in some people's minds. Having to do with allowing some people to also do this work. Who is the authority? Where does your authority come from to do that? And through all of that, even though these can at times be very exciting times, because one has to reformulate or freshly formulate and look. In this work, there is no need to be anybody. Not just no need, but there is nobody. It's not necessary. It's an obstruction. It's a hindrance seen clearly. And the energy flows undisturbed when that is not there of what I am, thinking about myself or my position or you and your position. This is all so wasteful, untrue, unnecessary, and in a marvelous way takes care of itself. Going into abeyance when there is a fresh listening, alone and together. I say alone and together because when there's listening here without obstructions, can that resonate in all of us to some degree or other? Because as was said last night, all of us are of the same empty, quiet space. There's our true base, our ground, the source from which everything springs. And overlaying it are the stories about me and you, with their incredible physical grabs and impacts, tensions, pleasures and pains, and fears. Overlaying it like a thick layer of clouds hides the sun. But the sun is there. Anybody who takes airplanes finds that every time to their surprise, there's the sun. Because of course at the time it's nighttime, and then there's the moon, and sometimes the moon is also not visible, but it's still there. Do I know that? Don't have to know it. So, if the conventional relationships that are established in a place like this don't hold, at least don't hold here for me, maybe need in people to project, but we are now questioning every story, every belief, aren't we? If we're interested. So if this conventional way of relating doesn't apply, is irrelevant here, how do we relate to each other? If we have no form to fit into, no structure. I know all kinds of words can come up. I used to say, let's relate as friends. But this can be conceptual, and somebody may feel anything but friendly toward me. What do we mean when we say relate as friends? See, the word hides the looking of what do we mean, how do we relate? We're there for each other, I'm there for you. Not with expectation, not with criticism. Recently I've said, but with respect, respecting each other. Respecting meaning looking again, respect. Looking anew at each other. And the energy and love that comes with that takes care of everything else. It needs no word. We will end here for today.